This review was filmed during the 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes. Without the labor of the writers and actors currently on strike, the works being covered here wouldn't exist. I fully support both the WGA and SAG-AFTRA in their fight for fair treatment and compensation against a system that continually denies them such. While a full boycott has not been called for, SAG-AFTRA has asked that everyone who does media about film and TV refrain from promoting struck content during this time. From what I can tell based on guidelines released, independent reviews do not constitute promotion of work, but as critical assessment of a work of art. Any praise I give to these works should be seen purely as praise for the artists, writers, and actors who created it. If anything, the praise is emphasizing that the writers, actors, and other artists deserve more compensation because they are who make these works possible. Additionally, this video was not made using any studio-provided screeners or materials. Do not support any studios during the strike. If you want to know more information, there are links down in the description for you to follow. They did the thing again, and this time it was a musical. Hello everyone and welcome back to the latest Minty reviews, and we are here for the next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody. This one was incredibly fun, and I cannot wait to talk about it. So let's just get right into it, shall we? So, as per the usual, non-spoilers first, and then spoilers afterwards. So, non-spoilery, let's just go with this. This is the musical episode. That's all I really need to say. This is the musical episode. There's some sci-fi, space, Star Trek stuff to explain why it's the musical episode. We get the whole cast and crew mostly the whole cast and crew singing about various things at different points. This episode's a musical. Star Trek finally did a musical, and they did a musical perfectly, in my eyes. They did a musical perfectly, where the music itself was phenomenal. It was pretty great, and the musical elements of it too, like the actual direction, the lighting, the choreography, all felt like a Broadway musical, but on a starship and in Star Trek, and it was great. And there were some definite standouts in this episode. Christina Chong, 100% a standout in this episode. Celia Rose Gooding, 100% a standout in this episode. Paul Wesley, we get Kirk back. Spoiler, we get Kirk back. Kirk, standout in this episode. Honestly, the whole cast was standouts in the episode, but mainly Christina Chong, Celia Rose Gooding were the main two, standouts in the episode. Mostly gets, some actual, Star Trek canon stuff, some lore stuff as well in this episode, too, to go along with the musical stuff. That's the cool thing. This episode not only was a musical, but it also progressed a lot of character arcs for, everyone involved in the whole series, which was really, really cool. They didn't just use the musical aspect as, a weird crutch or, a weird, thing to lean on here for this episode to be yeah, no, we're just gonna, tell, a not as good story. No, they told a great story here, too. That was also a musical. So, it's great. So, that's about all I can really say for non-spoilers. So, let's just get right into the spoilers, shall we? So, spoilers here. Spoilers, everyone. 3, 2, 1. Big musical numbers. Big musical numbers. So, to explain this episode, basically what happens is the Enterprise crew comes upon a contained subspace fold. The best way to put it. That's what they explain it as. They come across a pocket of space that has folded in on itself, that is doing some weird stuff, and they want to experiment with it. Honestly, fair. That is some basic Star Trek plot stuff there. It's yep, we see a thing, we're gonna mess with it to see what it does, see what happens with it. And the idea of it, Spock has this idea of if we can use this, we can then use this to basically have subspace communication across the entire sector in an instant. Kind of sending text messages and hopefully they go through. But sending it in an instant, it'll make communication way faster, triple the speed that it is now, and it'll be so good for the whole Federation, and just for everyone involved. So they're how do we do this? So they keep trying everything, doesn't really work out. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of intermitting storylines here and intermitting themes here about communication. How communication is lacking in certain ways. Because they're doing these experiments, the actual normal lines of communication are down because they need the extra power for Spock to do his stuff that he's doing. So Uhura has to do basically all the communications manually herself. They gotta she gotta move all the calls around, be yep, no medical, yep, here's your call, okay, here's some emails basically, okay, hey, here's transmission from here, boom, boom, doing all that stuff, doing phenomenal at it. She's doing peak Uhura stuff. She is moving everything around, handling it perfectly. However, so that communication aspect is there. There's also the communication aspect of the fact that Kirk is now on the ship because he got promoted to a lieutenant on the Farragut, And in a way of doing this, he now has to shadow Una, because the Enterprise is there too. He's now shadowing Una for the day, just basically like, see what a lieutenant has to go through, what like a number one has to go through, because that's basically what he's going to be now. He's going to be like a number one for the Farragut. So it's like, shadow Una, see what goes on. However, the communication aspect there is the fact that La'an still has a lot of feelings for Kirk, ever since episode 3. She still has a lot of feelings for him and doesn't know how to tell him these feelings, especially now. So she's lacking communication. Then there's also Spock and Chapel, where they aren't communicating well, because we find out that Chapel got accepted into this other medical science fellowship somewhere else with the Federation, which means she would have to leave the ship, and this is a really big deal for her, but she doesn't know how to tell Spock this, and Spock doesn't know because he's not been told this yet, but like he's been waiting to hear from this because him and Chapel are a thing at this point. And then the other lack of communication is between Pike and Batel, where Batel is trying to plan their vacation so they can go on vacation together, and Pike doesn't want to tell her, like, hey, I don't want to do any of that stuff doesn't sound fun to me, I don't want to do that. But he's trying to be nice, and he's like, oh, we got, like, some stuff to do. I can't, like, be here to do stuff. We're doing stuff with the Federation. He's just deflecting. So there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of, like, bad communication going on. And it's all coupled with this subspace fold they found. So then Uhura gets the idea of, like, hey, let's try sending through music. And it's like her and Pelia get this idea. It's like, let's try sending through music, because music is a different harmonic frequency than, communication arrays. Let's try sending through music, see if that works. They send through some songs from the musical Anything Goes, which is very funny, because that's just, I think of Fallout every time I hear that song, because it's one of the songs that plays in Fallout all the time, so I just think about that. But they send that through, and it causes the whole thing to just, like, shake, and then just send out this massive blast in the whole area, which is affecting not only their starship, but other Federation starships, and also some Klingon vessels in the same area as well. And they're like, okay, what happened here? Then it goes into the musical aspect of it. And I love the fact that they actually explain this, that it is diegetic. And now, if you don't know, and this is something that I really actually like a lot, is that in filmmaking, there are two different ways you can do music. There is diegetic and non-diegetic. Non-diegetic is usually what happens in movies and in film and such, where you hear like a score playing, or you hear like a needle drop song or whatever, where non-diegetic is music coming through to the audience that is not actually happening in the universe of the show or the movie or the film or whatever. So it's music that we as an audience can hear, but the actual actors and stuff in the show, the characters, do not hear it. That is non-diegetic. Then there's diegetic, which means that we are hearing it because they are hearing it. Perfect example of this is the movie Baby Driver, where Baby Driver in it is very, very precise, where every time you hear music in the movie, it is because Baby is listening to the music. So we're hearing the music he's hearing, and it like changes tonality, changes volume as the movie goes on. Well, they make it very apparent here that they are hearing the music too, and it's because of the subspace fold. The subspace fold basically sent out an improbability field. We're just throwing out every science fiction term possible here. It threw out an improbability field and has now put them into a field where they are now kind of scientifically, science-y, crossing over with a musical universe. So it's turning the entire thing into a musical. And we find out it's not just happening on the Enterprise, it's happening on other starships as well in the sector and in the area. So that's not good. But there's a really great opening number where they're all singing, and they're like, sorry, Captain, we don't know why we're singing this, but now we're singing, but everything appears normal. We don't know, but it's just all of them singing. So we get to actually hear the whole cast sing a little bit. We don't get to hear Anson Mount sing as much. We get to hear everyone else sing. And it is very, very funny, especially even Kirk. Like, Kirk's on the ship. Like, Paul Wesley's on the ship, and even he sings too. But they were all singing. They're like, okay, what's going on? We need to figure out what's happening. We need to fix this now. And they keep going through the whole episode. And this is a long episode. This is like the longest episode of the whole season. It's like an hour and 2 minutes long. It is a long episode. So they go through the whole episode trying to figure out ways to stop this and to figure out what is going on. And they don't know. However, going back to the theming of the episode of communication and lack thereof, what these songs are doing is they're basically allowing all these characters to express deep down emotions that they wouldn't normally express outside of song. They weren't expressed normally. So we have a musical number between Una and Kirk about how Una does her job. And the fact that she is trying to be more open with the crew and trying to be more friendly with them to basically make it so that way they can, listen to her and respect her a little bit more. But she's also like, hey, you're going to want to do that for your crew too. Make sure that you're familiar with your crew. Make sure your crew's familiar with you. Make sure you're there for your crew. Make sure that your crew is there for you, kind of a thing. But it's stuff that she wouldn't normally have said the way that she said it. And they also have like a dance number with it too. It's very funny. It's very great. But it's expressing that. Then it's followed up by a number by La'an, a solo ballad number, which is just great how it is, about her confessing her feelings to herself about Kirk. Something that she wouldn't have done normally, but now because the song is. So then this becomes an issue, and La'an points this out specifically. But I love how they actually are using musical terminology and musical number logic here to further the plot of the episode and actually pose a problem rather than just have it be in the episode. And this is something I love about this episode. And I love this episode, by the way. I absolutely love this episode, clearly. I love musicals. I really, really like musicals a lot. So the fact that they did a musical and they did it perfectly, to me, was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But I love the fact that they were actually using the musical framework to further the plot and to further these characters and to actually offer a problem for them to try and figure out in a Star Trek-y manner. So then it goes on, and we have La'an basically tell Pike, we need to figure this out now because this is actually a security threat. And Pike's like, you're telling me that singing is a security threat? You're saying our feelings are a security threat? And she's like, yes, it is. Because we're now saying our deep down emotions, our deep down feelings, that we don't want to do that. We shouldn't be doing that in public or in certain ways. Which then it leads to a very funny but very great scene where we actually see it actually happen on a ship as well, where we have Pike and we have Captain Battelle start having a singing argument on the bridge. And they're all like, we need to have this in the private. This is a private conversation, but they just keep singing about it. And it gets to a point where, like, Pike admits that he was, like, lying to Battelle about certain things. And then La'an's like, I'm done with this. Goes over, shuts the whole thing off. Like, no. Security threat. That's what this is. And it gets the further point across. So then now they're all just, like, on edge. Like, we need to stop this now. So then they're just trying to figure it out. But again, like, the way they used music in this episode, the way they used the musical idea in this episode was so great. Because they're all hearing the music as well. They know now at this point, like, anytime there's now heightened emotions, a musical number will start. So they're like, okay, we need to try and track this now. We're trying to figure out there's a pattern going on. So then we have Uhura and Spock trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how do we start a musical number then? Like, what's going to go on? And she literally says, like, well, if there's heightened emotions, a musical number will start. We've seen this happen now before. And then we get a number with Chapel. And it's like, oh no, what's going to go on here? And it starts off with Spock basically asking Chapel, like, hey, what happened with the Federation thing? What happened with the Fellowship thing? And it leads to a musical number. And this is a major character moment for Spock. Like a major character moment for Spock. Where we have a whole musical number of Chapel dumping Spock in public to everyone. And it's a massive dance number too. Where she's like, no, I care more about this fellowship than I do about our relationship. Because this means a lot for my career and a lot for me. Whereas our relationship isn't that. And it's like, oh no. This was said in a very good musical number with a lot of choreography. So Spock now, in this series, has gotten dumped twice. In the span of 4 episodes, he's gotten dumped twice. So that's not good. But that also then leads to original series Spock and further Spock of being the more Vulcan Spock, which is what we needed. And the fact that the man had to get dumped twice, one of those times being in a musical number, I understand. I fully understand why Spock is like, no, screw emotions, I'm not dealing with that anymore. I don't want to deal with that ever again. He also has a great, phenomenally written musical number as well about him being the X, but also him doing a math equation and him being the variable X in the equation too. It's some phenomenal wordplay, like absolutely great wordplay. And they just basically keep going on there. So they figure out the pattern. Musical numbers start, and we're hearing them with heightened emotions. We also then get La'an, before the musical number starts, confessing her feelings to Kirk and about the whole time travel stuff. And Kirk having a funny line like, I feel like you're about to break a rule, and I'm not a rule breaker here, but you're about to break a pretty big rule here. And she's explaining the whole time travel thing that happened to them. But in this whole situation, we also learn, this is a great like little piece of lore stuff, that Kirk and Carol Marcus are already kind of an on and off thing. She's back on Starbase 1. There's also the first mention of Carol Marcus. And that is actually the acknowledgement that she's pregnant with Kirk's kid. And Kirk knows he has a kid on the way. And is why he's not, like, being there. Which is a big, like, contentious thing in the fan base about, like, why does he care about his kid? Does he even know the kid? Yes, he knows the kid's there. And Marcus says later, like, hey, don't come to us. Like, don't see us. So now La'an feels real sad because he's like, oh no, I like a man who has a kid. Who's about to have a kid and is also kind of in a relationship. Which is unfortunate. Which is very unfortunate and a very big thing. But she says it before a song is able to happen. So, like, now they're starting to figure out more of the rules of going on here. And then finally we have this great number, phenomenal number, with Celia Rose Gooding, who I have found out is actually a Grammy and Tony nominated actress. She's a Grammy winner, Tony nominated for Broadway. She was in Jagged Little Pill, the musical, and she was, like, nominated for the lead of that, which is phenomenal. By the way, she has a solo number talking about, like, her experiences of, like, you know, yeah, she does better working alone, and she can find the patterns, and she's, like, always there to help people, and always there to fix things. That's her whole deal. And she finally finds a pattern. It's a very subtle pattern, but she finds a pattern that whenever these numbers happen, whenever these musical numbers happen, there's, like, a level of something that, like, you know, increases. And when you have more people doing a number together, this level increases a lot. So then she's able to figure out, like, okay, if we increase this level here, and I forgot what it was, like some science fiction terminology there, but if we increase this level to, like, 344, the subspace fold will just implode on itself. It'll just implode, it'll cease to exist. It'll just, boof, be done. And they need to do this quickly because they found out via experiments that if you try to blow it up, it will blow up every ship in the area, and it's just expanding further. It'll just blow up everything affected by it, which will be a lot of ships. And at this point as well, there are Klingons who are being affected by it, and they're like, we're going to blow it up because we're feeling very dishonored right now. We are going to blow that thing up right now. So they need to stop that. So we get the big finisher, big final closing number here, where Uhura's like, we need to have a big full cast ensemble number bringing everyone together, and she is to lead it, of basically saying why they all love being on the Enterprise and why they are all here at the same time, and how improbable it is they're all here at the same time, but how great it is for them to be a crew and for them to work together and for them to be all here doing the same thing. And it is a phenomenal number. There's a little, like, inter break there with the Klingons where they hail them just to get them involved in them. They do, like, a pop rap breakdown thing. It's hilarious. Also, Bruce Horak is back, the actor who played Hemmer in season 1. He's back portraying the Klingon captain, which is great. It's great to see him back, and great to see him as a Klingon too, which is pretty cool. But we have this big, huge number, pushes the level up. Everyone's involved with it, including Pike. Everyone's involved in it. They're all dancing. They're all singing. The whole crew of the Enterprise is singing at the same time. Bumps the thing up. Implodes the whole subspace fold. Everyone's good. Big grand finale, and they are able to do it. And we end the episode off with basically all the communication issues that have happened this whole time kind of coming to an end, coming to a rest, just as a musical does at the end as well, finishing out everyone's story, where Kirk feels like he's more welcomed on the Enterprise, and he understands a lot more about the crew and how to, like, be a good number one. Spock and Chapel need to have a conversation at some point about what's going on with their own emotions. They need to have a conversation at some point, but they are now kind of separate. And Pike and Batel have a conversation as well. It's like, yeah, no, we need to just work some things out here. I just didn't want to do that vacation thing, but we need to work some things out. And they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out, but they are willing to figure it out. And that's the whole thing. And of course it ends with a very funny, like, little moment of Uhura coming. And also Spock makes do with the Klingons over some blood wine, referencing back to, again, episode 1 of the season, which is great. He has some diplomacy with some blood wine. It's hilarious. They don't actually show it, but they mention it. It's like, that's a good little reference back to episode 1. And then it finally ends with Uhura doing her job, hailing some people as well, and telling them what happened in the other thing. And she's humming the closing number, and they all just kind of look at her like, oh god, no, is it happening again? And she's like, oh, sorry, it's just an earworm. Just an earworm, just stuck in your head. And that was kind of like a laugh and smile, and that's how the episode ends. And also the whole opening of the episode too, like the actual, like, opening, is an acapella version of the Star Trek theme, which is great, which is of the Strange New World theme. But this episode was phenomenal on a lot of different levels, and I, as I said, am a massive fan of musicals, and the fact that they did this episode in a way that still felt Star Trek, while also feeling very much like a musical, was so great. And the fact that it was all diegetic as well, and they actually explained it in the episode why they're doing a musical, and the fact they're trying to science a musical, which is hilarious. But the songs themselves were great. The actors that they actually had being like the leads for the songs were the ones who actually could, you know, sing professionally, like Celia Rose Gooding, Christina Chong. They actually have backgrounds in singing. Oh, Rebecca Romaine. They all have backgrounds in singing, so they actually were singing. But the one I want to point out the most here was Ethan Peck. Ethan Peck was singing in his Spock voice. So he was still showing very little emotion as Spock and singing a Broadway musical number. Good job, Ethan Peck. That's a round of applause type of thing there. That was phenomenal. You did that. Like, absolutely phenomenal. This episode was great. The choreography also great as well. This episode was great. It was so much fun, and that's all it was trying to be. It was an episode that was just simply fun, while also moving forward so many character arcs as well in musical, which is great. And the fact this was the penultimate episode of the season is also just hilariously great. The fact that it was a perfect penultimate as well, because again, it progressed a lot of story arcs and a lot of character arcs for the finale. And they even reference in the finale too, just so you know. I've already watched the finale. I'll do the review in just a little bit for that. But it progressed everything so well while being a really good musical. And I loved it. I loved it so much, and I'm glad they did it. And I'm wondering what the pitch meeting was like for this episode as well, but that's a whole different type of funny thing to even get into. But that was episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody. I kind of just want to go back and listen to the actual songs now. Just listen to the actual songs and try to get my friends who are also musical fans listening to them as well, who are not Star Trek fans, to be like, hey, no, listen to this. This was done in a Star Trek episode. Please listen, kind of a thing. But either way, let me know down in the comments as well what you think of this episode, and what you think about the whole integration of musical elements and musical stuff into Star Trek and how they did it. Personally, I loved it, but I want to hear what you all thought as well. And also, what number do you think was the best one of this episode as well? And if you liked the video as well, leave a like as well. It helps out a lot of the channel, helps out with the algorithm and getting discoverability for YouTube and stuff, and also shows that you just, you know, like the stuff I'm putting out there too. It definitely helps out a lot. And if you want to help out even more, and it would mean a lot to me as well, leave a subscription as well. It's completely free, and you'll be notified of everything I post, and you'll be able to catch everything I post later as well. All the reviews, reactions, and everything else that I post on the channel as well. And until next time, right over here is going to be a playlist for another thing you can watch as well from the channel. Over here is going to be a video that YouTube recommends for you as well. And until next time, stay musical, stay bright, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace everyone. Peace.